Great morning, friends. Great morning, world. Let's make sure that everything looks like it's working well. Great morning, everybody. Welcome to Make Sense Mondays with your boy, Dr. JC Doornick, aka the Dragon. You might have noticed that I'm a little bit consistent in what I do. One of the things that I just like to put out there is just, I guess, to be somebody that you can trust. So I'm just really excited and honored to be able to do these Make Sense Mondays, which I do every week, 8 a.m. Eastern, and they come to you live right now. Today's topic is super, super relevant, and it comes from just an interesting observation, but also a place of gratitude. You know, I'm going to share with you some things that I've done to dramatically improve the quality of my life. And case in point, I'll share with you something in real time, just something that just reminds me of how important it is to be consistent and live in structure and things like that. Great morning to you, John. Amen to you. Great morning, Chris. Yeah, see, I love when people come in here and use this as a place to ask for prayers. You know, makes me feel good that we're creating that kind of an environment. So great morning, Chris. Great morning, Kathy. Prayers out to you, John. Going to let some people trickle in. Today's going to be about minimization, which is a fascinating topic, but it's kind of taken on some other components as well. So for those of you that see smoke passing by in my Make Sense Mondays, that is not me smoking pot or anything like that. That's incense. Part of my morning ritual is I burn incense. Great morning, Colleen. Great morning, Vicky. See some familiar friends here. So in any case, today is for Make Sense Monday. Great morning, Deb Silverman. We're going to talk about minimization, and it's going to be an insight and a tool that you can use to just dramatically simplify your life. And I'll get into that in a second. But I've got a couple of distinctions that kind of took on or just kind of popped up this morning, and I just want to share them. So first of all, one is I want to just share an interesting distinction and an observation that I've made. For those of you that don't know, I practice as a health coach, you know, which I've been doing that for 19 years. Just something that I'm just super passionate about. That's something that came about as a result of kind of living in the personal growth and, you know, coaching realm, even when I was practicing as a chiropractor, and just noticing that, you know, how important a physical change is. A lot of people want to build their business. A lot of people want to take control of their mindset and stuff. We talk a lot about that here. But at the same time, if somebody doesn't take care of their physical health, you know, the idea is on a healthy body rests a healthy mind. So that's why I added that tool to my belt to be able to help people shift their health. But what it is that's fascinating me is, you know, whenever somebody, and I have this written down, but whenever somebody comes to me to do something like, you know, we always meet people where they're at. I do that in conversation as well, you know, but whenever somebody comes up and they have these goals that they're stating that they want to lose weight, tighten up their nutrition, or maybe even learn some new healthier habits. What's interesting to observe when somebody says something like that, and I've been in that situation many times, and I probably will, as you know, again, I realize that for the most part, those people are wanting to remove or add things. Think about that. When you set a goal with your health, typically people are looking to remove or add things to or from their life with the hopes and intentions that those removals or additions, you know, naturally, logically would improve the quality of their lives. But what's interesting of the distinction, this has nothing to do with the topic for Make Sense Monday, but I just think it's super cool. The interesting distinction that I made today is to look at those things, that idea of trying to add or remove something from your life, and then shifting. You know, some of my clients make a massive shift the moment that they start looking at those things as self-care from the perspective or through the lens the curious lens of self-care. So I just wanted to share that with you today, because I know a lot of people, the super highway to getting yourself out, unstuck and in motion is a physical shift. You should always start with that, I believe. So take a look at your daily habits. That's my offering before we get started. Take a look at your daily habits today, whether you're practicing healthy or unhealthy habits. Because remember, I'm saying adding or removing, and assess where you stand in terms of self-care. Right? What's cool about that? It's a cool way to shift your mindset today on this Monday, arming and equipping you, removing the blindfolds from your sleepwalking mind, right? And just taking control of this day by making sense of a different distinction, which is what I'm all about. It's cool to shift your mindset to a more relevant why, maybe today, and consider taking better care of yourself. Maybe today your health goals, you should just maybe consider looking at how they're just a way of taking better care of yourself, right? I thought that was pretty cool. So great morning, Lori. Good to see everybody here. Okay, so just to preface this, because minimization is a pretty simple concept, and I just want to organically flow. Dropped a new podcast episode. If you're into that, the idea of handling adversity with grace. I know that nobody has adversity in their lives right now. God, I sure do sometimes, right? Because it's a perception sometimes. But the new podcast episode dropped. It's called the new podcast called Make Sense with Dr. JC Doornick, cost-free podcast. So I just encourage you guys to go check that out. I hope that you'll like it, rate it, and review it. But today's episode that just dropped is on handling adversity. And what I'm doing with the podcast right now in the early form, the first like 10 or 12 episodes before I start loading the interviews, I'm having just amazing interviews on just really relevant topics, the things that are going on in your minds, the distinctions and the conversations that make you go, right? So we have a lot of that stuff coming, on all the topics that are relevant right now. But I'm adding, that stuff later, because first we have to go over some verbiage and teach you some tools and skills. So handling adversity with grace is something that is just a really, really relevant but powerful thing to make sense of, but then learn how to control. Next week's episode that'll drop will be on a strategy that I call sorting. And it kind of like lends to that. They're all coming in a sequence. But sorting is just an idea of simplifying your life, what goes, what stays. So I go over the concepts, with that, but also teach you some cool skills. So that's how the podcast is coming. But today's topic of minimization will flow into that as well. But I just want to share an interesting thing that happened to me this morning, or happened, I guess, for me this morning, that I think is going to be super relevant. I don't know how you feel right now, but I've said this many times before, but at 52 years of age, whatever that means, my perception is that the world is complicated, fast paced, and moving very, very fast, right? So here I am, somebody that spent almost 20 years working in personal growth and self-development and making sense of things. And I've got every tool, and I've set my community up the right way. My wife has this amazing, passion project that she created called the Make Sense Academy that I'm fully in support of and very, very, very active in. If anybody's interested in the idea of running with a bunch of like-minded people that are just extraordinarily breaking through in their life because of this project that she created, it's called the Make Sense Academy. As she puts it, it's a high-value, low-cost environment where you get access to online courses and morning rise ups like this every day, but in a group format. So there's collaboration, there's networking, there's business, building going on in there. So that's called the Make Sense Academy. My wife is a genius. She's a clinical therapist, a sex therapist, and a relationship coach. She's an amazing person. So together, we're in there, just creating something special. So if you're interested in information on the Make Sense Academy, just she'll be looking at this. just say makes sense, or write the word community, and we'll make sure that she gets you that information. But in that psychological safe haven, and knowing that I'm somebody that has practiced, self-development, for years and years and years, you'd think that I don't struggle, but of course I do. Of course I do. So I just want to share with you something that happened last night and this morning, just to put this in a transparent, place where you recognize that if you're struggling and you're confused and you're experiencing things like anxiety and worry and concern and stuff like that, you're not alone. First of all, you're not alone. Now there's danger in saying, oh, good, it's good to know that I'm not alone, and embracing and accepting that as your reality, because there's something you can do about it. But I just want you to know that it's normal. It's actually highly normal right now to be experiencing feelings like that. So I myself, I'm somebody where if I feel my thoughts are racing and I have anxiety and I'm worried about something, even though I know that there's a bit of an illusion and that I'm catastrophizing because I've done a lot of the work, it still can take a hold of you. So I don't know if you relate to that, but if you're ever experiencing something like anxiety, worry, and concern, and you're kind of like maybe blowing it out of proportion, it's keeping you up at night. You're waking up in the morning feeling the same way. You're constantly hoping that it's just going to go away and resolve itself, but it's not. I just want you to know that that's how I felt last night, right? And I went through my motions. We have our night routine, and we shut off our technology. We're doing everything right, but I woke up this morning and it still had a hold on me. So I don't know, maybe in the chat, you can share if that's ever happened, in your life where, you run your regularly scheduled, system of like getting back on track, but it still has a hold on you. You're still kind of connected to it. So I woke up this morning and I was kind of bummed out, right? To feel like I still felt like that way. But, still, I identified it as something. This is the interesting distinction, because I went into my morning routine this morning. And the idea is, I go downstairs, I control what I consume. I started to watch a really, really cool interview, a podcast interview. I started to write and things like that. So I see, Deb says, yep, happening now as I transition into a new job. Exactly. Yes, it's called bipolar. Well, that's another topic of discussion. But what I'm saying is that, I still felt that it had a hold on me. So I went into my morning routine this morning and, with the hopes that it, as it typically does, would clear the path, clear the fog, So I went into my morning routine, and I got to be honest with you, it didn't seem to be working, right? My morning routine, right? Like that I was really leaning on because I didn't feel good. I didn't feel optimistic. I felt worried about stuff that I really shouldn't be worried about, but I still was. I felt weak, I guess I would say. And then there's a potential cascade that you could go down the path of feeling weak. So anyway, I pressed on, and here's the distinction. The reason why I pressed on, even though the perception was that it wasn't working. So I don't know if you can relate to that. I was doing something to feel better and clear the path, lift the fog so I can take command of my day, but it wasn't working, meaning I wasn't feeling better. I wasn't feeling clear. I wasn't motivated. I didn't feel excited. And that even crept in a little bit of new worry that it wasn't working. But I made a distinction because I was listening to an interview this morning, and the interview was about, ironically, this topic, and how the only thing that we really, really need to do to warrant us pressing on anyway, even in the face of it not appearing to work, would be to identify. You'd have to know what you want in life, right? I wanted to have a good day today. I wanted to reclaim control of my day. I wanted to move through my day today as the shot caller, as the dominant force and creator of my day. That's what I wanted. And that was attached to everything else that I wanted: my goals, my dreams, my children, my role as a dad. So I wanted it, but it wasn't working, right? So I know what I want, but I identified that how I was feeling, these anxious feelings of worry and concern, I made a very, very distinct identification that how I was feeling was in no way, shape, or form proactive and in support of what I wanted. It was so obvious to me that everything I wanted was being held back by how I felt. Now, the reason why I'm sharing that with you is that's an important distinction to make, to know what you don't want or what doesn't serve you. And that leads perfectly into this topic of minimization. So follow me. I saw how I was feeling, and it made me say, that is not helping. And you can do this with people in your life and things in your life as well as we get into this topic. So that was why I pressed on. That's what I want to share with you today is if you identify that something is in the way or that you're carrying a bag of rocks on your shoulder as you try to climb a mountain, you have two choices: to either carry that burden with you, which means that you're accepting defeat. And you're also in accepting defeat saying that maybe I don't want it. And then you can say, maybe I can't have it. Maybe I don't deserve it. But if you can identify what it is that you want and it's important enough to you, and you can identify what is not in support of it or who is not in support of it, it's important because it warrants fighting further. Right? So what happened is I said, screw it. Even though this is not working, I'm going to continue forward. I'm going to continue listening to this interview, and I'm going to continue writing. And just like a ray of sunshine from the heavens, boom, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I regained my consciousness. I regained my confidence. I regained my excitement about the day. I felt a surge of potential and possibilities and hope and all of that stuff. And I started to look at how I was feeling as like a road sign that I passed that was just in the distance, and it kept getting further and further and further away from me. So what's the lesson there? Yes, you got to know what you want. And it's got to be important to you, which is why you connect it to the things that matter most in your life. But you also have to be able to identify in your life, and we can get into this topic here today, and just identify the things that need to go and things that should stay, right? So the idea of this topic today of minimization is something that I think a lot of people are confused with, maybe because they listen to the minimalist podcasts and things like that. But the basic premise of what I wanted to share with you today, which is why I let in with that, because I'm in this place where I just feel fantastic. I just feel so confident. I was even worried about coming here to do this today because I just didn't feel right. And I'm the kind of person that, when I don't feel congruent, I just don't feel like I'm of value to other people. So I needed to get myself right, which is, something I always try to do before I come here, before I do a podcast, before I put anything out there in service of others. I want to make sure I got right. So I was a little bit worried about that. I don't know if you can resonate with that, a little bit of an imposter syndrome type thing, a little bit of comparative reality. So one thing that I know for sure that has helped me is, in light of what I just said, is to be able to identify how to live a simple life. Now, when I say that, I know that there's two sets of people out there. There's people out there that, and I'm both of them, right? I'm the kind of person that could admit that I'm always open to change, right? I know that life is always changing, but we have our core set structure and strategy how to handle adversity. And that you'll hear that in the podcast. Some people look at the idea of the obstacle as the way. And if you look, everything tells you that that's true. When an obstacle, when an adversity strikes and hard times, come, not only is there sunshine on the other side, but we come to learn, through over time, that facing obstacles, just like kids do in video games, is actually the way. In fact, the universe tends to put obstacles in your way while you're on your way, right? Isn't that interesting? What's fascinating about obstacles is when you decide to contend and go after your dreams, the universe has, this is why we say God works in mysterious ways. The universe has this weird way of actually, like, intentionally, as if it's trying to mess with you, place obstacles in your way. Has anyone ever had that experience where, you know, you make a decision to go and it just seems like things get harder immediately, right? So I can see why we decide that the obstacle is the way, right? However, another thing, because I'm open and curious, and it kind of leads to, you know, what I shared this morning, sometimes removing the obstacle, see, not running from the obstacle, but removing the obstacle out of your way is the way. Isn't that an interesting concept? So for those of you that trudge through obstacles, right? I do a talk about this. I put a piece of poop on the stage and I say, isn't it strange how the universe has mysteriously placed everything that we desire right on the other side of a big piece of smelly poop? And we talk about this idea that if you want to succeed in life, you have to navigate the poop. But what about the idea of the removal of the poop? Right? So there's different ways to navigate obstacles. You can learn how to fight through them, go over them, under them, sometimes even realize that they don't exist. Right? But what about the idea of removing obstacles? Maybe obstacles don't need to stay in your way. Maybe they're there because you've somehow tolerated them. And that's not just like clutter in your house, because that can create obstacles. That's also people in your life, and it's also fat on your body or thoughts on your mind, right? So that's why I wanted to make sure that I clarify. I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on minimization, but right now, in the spirit of minimization, I just want you to think about where you're going. Just like this morning, I made a decision where I wanted to go, and then starting to take an inventory of the things, the people, and stuff in your life that is not in support. The obstacles that are maybe distracting you. Like I look at my desk right now. What on this desk do I not need? Now, my desk is kind of minimized, so I don't have a lot of stuff, but I can look around and I can see, here are my notes for today. I do see some paperwork here that is from another day. I don't need this, right? So that's how I could determine, it's not that this is a bad thing, but it could be a distraction. But more importantly, it has nothing to do with my day. So I take that and I put that aside. So that's the idea of minimization. It's not quitting. It's not running away from challenges. It's just making your life more simple and removing things that don't matter and people, right? So let's look at health, for example, in terms of minimization, because I was talking about self-care this morning, right? So if you have goals and desires to live a long, healthy life and be the best husband or wife or friend or business man or woman or whatever your goals are, if you allow yourself to dream big and you decide that you want all these things, and then you look at your body and you feel your body and you look at these things like being overweight, you know, I was somebody that was 80 pounds overweight. Isn't that an interesting way of looking at it? It's saying, how does this help? Right? Isn't that interesting? So it's not, and it wouldn't just be, you know, something like that, because the logical thing to do would be to say, well, would I be in better equipped to have the life that I dream, in better shape or in worse shape? Right? So you can look at it really logically and rationally and take the approach of losing weight, right? And practicing self-care in a different light and saying, well, I'm going to start doing things and not doing things completely in coordination with where I'm going in life. So you see why it's so important to know where you're going. You can't begin the process of minimizing in your life until you know where you're going. Because once you decide where you're going, you can start looking around and saying, how does this stuff in my house? I mean, men, are you somebody that's a pack rat? I mean, people start collecting stuff and then it can get it to the extreme of hoarding, but that can happen in all aspects of your life. It can happen with your health. It can happen in your surroundings, the people that you hang out with, right? You could find yourself in a job right now that you might need to keep for a little while, but do you already have an exit plan because you've determined that that job does not in any way, shape, or form support this dream state that you have? So that's what minimization is. It's this simple principle of, if I'm on an airplane and I'm taking off and my goal in that airplane is to create lift and fly, but I'm stagnant because I have too much weight on the plane, right? I can't throw everything off the plane because some things I need, right? But I start throwing off the things that I don't need. So this is a fun way to look at your life today. It creates the path of least resistance. And like I said, for those of you that are tough guys or tough girls and you like to fight through adversity, that's fine. But, I would just ask you to, maybe entertain the idea that it might not be necessary to fight through some adversities. Maybe the obstacle would be you learning, like maybe if you want to accept a challenge today, maybe you need to look and say, this is not a challenge that I need to fight through, so that I can save myself for the challenges that I actually need to fight through. So that's kind of what next week's episode will be sorting. Sometimes in sorting, we have to decide what is important and what is not, what matters and what does not, what's in support of what I want and what does not. So a fun exercise, and this is something that we did in the Make Sense Academy, and I can invite all of you guys to do that, is just take the next 30 days and just practice this by getting rid of something or someone from your life each day. Just one thing. It could be, I'll give you an example. The other day, I found a coiled up wire for my iPhone that I know doesn't work. I found a charger that is dead and it's still hanging around. So, I could take one day and get rid of that. I can take one. And I'll tell you something, you would be surprised. And you're only doing one thing a day, but when you start playing in this arena, you'll start realizing how much stuff that you can get rid of, right? So let's look at the idea of anxiety, right? Because I started off with that. It's such a fascinating, thing to look at anxiety through this lens of minimization, right? So anxiety feels terrible. It gets a grip on you. I just shared a story about how it had a grip on me last night and I woke up with it, right? But the only reason that I decided to press through is I went through this process of what goes and what stays. And I made the distinction that anxiety, that's the first step. Eckhart Tolle has a great quote. He says, the first step to end suffering is the acknowledgement that you are. You have to start off by acknowledging that you're feeling anxious or suffering, rather than just think that the world is messed up, right? Because we don't change the world. We change how we respond to the world, perceive and respond to the world. So once you identify that, the next step is to determine whether or not you want to feel that way anymore. And the best way to do that would be to ask yourself, does feeling this way support what I want for the day? Now, if you don't have a goal for the day, you're in trouble because you can't answer that question. But if you have a goal to be the dominant creator and shot caller and feel confident and feel full of possibilities and potential today, well, then how does anxiety fill into that? I mean, to a certain degree, we need a little bit of anxiety when I'm backing up my car. So I want to worry that I'm not going to hit the post or run over an animal or something like that. So anxiety can be productive. But when it becomes counterproductive is when it takes a hold of you and it starts to distract you and it starts to, take you off your game like I was last night and this morning. So if you can look at that and say, I want to be on my game, right? And that frustration, could build into a fire, but it has to start with you saying, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want that in my house anymore. I don't need that in my house anymore. So that's what it means, is maybe it's time to lean up and clean up, right? And raise the fog, the unnecessary fog and confusion and bag of rocks from your life today. And what you'll find is that getting through times like I had this morning that you might have had as well, or last night, are a lot easier when there's less distractions and less things to be concerned with and less feelings of being out of control. Wouldn't you agree? So maybe it's a good time today as we close up to just take an inventory of your life. And the easiest way to do that is look at the things and people that you interact with on a daily basis. Start there. You could do this 30-day challenge and just start asking, just start disputing them, right? Cognitive disputation, right? Start disputing things and people in your life and also your feelings and emotions, right? That's the beginning. And just ask yourself if they're in support of what you want in your life or not. And that's the first step to making a decision to minimize. Now, it takes patience, right? A lot of things, especially beliefs and feelings, we live in a world full of that is very, very much programmed for immediate gratification, right? A lot of people get frustrated when they make a decision to not feel a certain way or get rid of something or someone in their life, and it persists. So you might, if you're struggling right now, this is a big distinction. If you're struggling right now in your life and you're not having a fantastic day, you might not be struggling. You might just be experiencing impatience right now. Maybe you are doing the things that I'm talking about, but you're just frustrated. Maybe that's what happened to me last night or this morning. Maybe you're just impatient. Maybe you just need to chill and wait a little bit and just keep at it like I did this morning, right? I was getting impatient because usually about 10 minutes into my morning structure, I feel better, but I wasn't. So I was getting impatient and it was showing up as anxiety. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get even more anxiety now because, right? But no, I was just impatient. So I pressed forward because I had something that I wanted and I collected $200. I passed go and collected $200. So this is Make Sense Mondays. Hey, just a quick one. I'll put this, I'm going to post about this a lot, but apparently Facebook is not allowing people to stream at the end of this month. So if you want to make sure that you get the Make Sense Mondays, because when we stop streaming live, just make sure that you, I'll put it up here, make sure that you sign up for our newsletter. And that's how you can find it. We have a free newsletter, riseup.dragon.com/newsletter. And if you get on our newsletter, first one's coming out tomorrow. You'll always see Make Sense Mondays on there and everything that my wife is doing with Make Sense Academy and everything like that. Love and appreciate you. I hope something that I said today woke you up like someone woke me up this morning, because it's a lot better on the other side, right? The juice is worth the squeeze. So I hope you can find ways and use some of these insights and tools that I offer to make the squeeze, right, easier, right? Take the path of least resistance. Love and appreciate you all, Instagram and all the Facebook channels. And this is Dr. JC, the Dragon, signing out. Hope you'll join us in the Make Sense Academy. Just put Make Sense or community, and we'll have my wife reach out to you. Have an amazing day.